And now, the survival show that once survived a night in Bangkok with a rabid pack of Marines. In this episode, we sit down with Jeremy Paris from the Veterans Resource Podcast. We'll be discussing a little-known fact about just how many and varied veterans organizations are out there and how you can get involved. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode 149. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Welcome to In the Rabbit Hole, Jeremy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Jeremy, tell us about your service. Let's start there.
My service, okay. So I was 17 years old when I graduated from high school, and I went directly into the Army Reserves. I actually had to have my mom go and sign for me to get in because I was so young. I went in as a personnel administration sergeant, so I basically did the admin stuff, the paperwork, and I didn't really like that. But after about 3 years in the reserves, they were closing down my reserve unit, and so they gave me the option to go to a different reserve unit, or I could try out for one of the other units that shared the building on different weekends. And one of them was the Civil Affairs Battalion. And they were doing all of the fun stuff that I wanted to do when I signed up for the Army. They were in the field all the time. They learned different languages, and they supported the Special Forces, always deploying. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to try out for them. And so it was my 21st birthday. I went and they had a tryout for me. So I did land navigation, weapons qualification course, a PT test, and a rucksack march. And I crushed them all. Most people spend their 21st birthday a little bit different, but to me, I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it so much that I said, you know what? I don't want to do this part-time anymore. I'm going to go full-time. And so I signed up for active duty. I think within that same week, I tried to go civil affairs, but they said, yeah, you're already trained as personnel, so we're just going to put you in as personnel, and you can always request to switch over later. And I was like, okay. Not knowing that that was going to be impossible to do. And I spent the next 7 years in the Army just trying to get out of personnel and into something more fun where I could be outside, be in the field. Then I ended up getting out in 2000, and I've been supporting the Department of Defense as a contractor ever since.
So now you have your own podcast, the Veteran Resource Podcast. What is the mission of that podcast?
So there's thousands of veteran-focused nonprofit organizations out there, and most people can name maybe 3, maybe a handful. Mm-hmm. That goes for veterans too. I wanted to create a podcast where I was interviewing a different veteran-focused nonprofit every single week. That way, veterans could listen to the show and they could find out what organizations were out there, what programs and what opportunities they had available to them. And because each one of these organizations is like a different niche organization. I mean, some are doing like kayaking, and some are helping with PTSD. Other ones are doing like farming. And I talked to a guy, the most recent podcast episode was a guy doing golf for veterans. And you don't normally think like, wow, there's an organization out there to get out there and play more golf. But there's a lot actually. So I figured I would create this podcast to really inform veterans that they were there.
Jeremy, let's break for a quick announcement. Listeners, in honor of Veterans Day, we're going to do something we actually meant to do a long time ago when we first started the ITRH Armada, and that is to offer a discount to veterans, to active duty, to first responders. Just send a quick email to itrh@intherabbithole.com. Tell me a little bit about who you are and what you did or what you currently do, and we'll get you hooked up with a 10% discount on any membership level. Now, if you're new to the show and you're wondering, what is the ITRH Armada? That is how we pay the bills around here and do something extra cool for listeners, the ITRH Armada is our special membership program that features all kinds of cool benefits. If you get at least $1 worth of value out of every episode each month, that would actually add up to about $4.33 worth of value you get just listening to the show. And for as little as $2.50 a month, you can help us keep the lights on, keep doing the stuff we're doing here, and even get more great stuff. So again, check out itrh.net if you're not a service member or first responder. If you are a service member or first responder, again, email me at itrh@intherabbithole.com. Tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do or what you did, and we'll get you hooked up. With that, let's get back to Jeremy and hear about the cool stuff he's doing for veterans. Why are there so many different veterans organizations? I admit, I can think of maybe 3 off the top of my head. So why are there so many different ones?
You look at the VA, right? That's a Veterans Administration, tries to be the one organization that can handle everything. And they're kind of struggling right now.
A bit.
I mean, you look at anything else going on in the world, and it's hard to be the one-stop shop for everything. So you've got these organizations that a lot of them get started just because a veteran is looking for something specific. I don't get around other veterans that much, and I'm feeling kind of alone, not liking this, and I'd really love to get out with more veterans, and I really like to fish. Let me look and see if there's any veteran organizations out there that have to do with fishing. And they do a couple quick searches, and they might find some but that don't really agree with what they're looking for. And eventually they say, you know what, I'm just going to start my own. And so they start an organization, then it ends up growing from there and turning into something huge that's in every state around the country. There's tens of thousands of veterans who are all benefiting from it. But it's the fact that they're not trying to do everything. They're not saying, well, yeah, we do fishing out of kayaks, but we also do art, and we also help you with your groceries, or help homeless people or something. That's taking on too much, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That actually makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I guess now I have to ask, what are some of the more unusual organizations that you've come across?
There's one called Warrior Hike. I interviewed Sean Goebel. Warrior Hike is really interesting. They help people walk off the war. So he talks about back in the olden days, way, way long ago, when people would go to war, they were walking. They would walk into a different country and invade. And when that war was over, they would walk back home. And sometimes it would take many months or years. And they've got that time to decompress, to really think about everything, to talk with each other, to support each other during this long walk. Nowadays, you could be over there fighting. There's shots being fired over your head. You're seeing friends of yours dying or limbs getting taken. And 2 days later, you're back home and you're in a Walmart. You have no time to decompress. So what he does is he grabs people that are coming out of the military and he takes them hiking the entire length of, say, the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail. They're out there for 6 months at a time doing these hikes. And along the way, they're stopping at different VFWs, American Legions, places like that. And they're talking. Sometimes they're giving speeches. Sometimes they're just hanging out and talking with others. But they have that time to decompress and really come back down from that time of battle.
I could see that as being extremely important. That's pretty cool. Are there any others that you can share with us?
Oh, yeah. There's, let's see, the 6th branch. They're in Baltimore, here where I am. They came at it from a different angle. Instead of saying veterans always need help, they said, we're veterans. The one common thread that we all have is that we join because we want to serve. And that feeling of wanting to serve doesn't go away when you get out of the military. So he looked at the problem that he could see around him in inner city Baltimore. There was an area, Oliver. If you ever watched The Wire, then you've seen Oliver, because that's where parts of it were filmed.
Oh, okay.
And it was in great need of rescuing. There was just dilapidated buildings and there's garbage everywhere. And it was just a community in desperate need. And so he got a bunch of veterans together and they started the 6th branch. And they started going there every single day and just working on making it better. So they were painting buildings and building flower gardens, and they built playgrounds there. They would spend entire weekends just picking up garbage and cutting down brush, where there was this one area that was completely covered with brush, a huge lot, and you couldn't even get into it. It was just an eyesore. And they went in there and completely cleaned it up, and it's a great area now for the children to play. And not long after they did that, some of the local kids put up signs and they started their own football league using that area.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so it's that feeling that I'm a veteran. You don't need to give me anything. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help the community. They decided they were just not going to leave, and they stayed there, and the community embraced them. And recently, they past 2 years, they built a urban garden there. And all of the produce goes to the community. All of the community, they all come out and they help with the garden, and they'll have 300 volunteers there on any given day.
That's really cool. You're obviously passionate about this topic. You dedicate time, money, energy producing a podcast, which I know firsthand is a big undertaking. But what keeps you inspired not only to do your show, but to keep helping other veterans?
Well, episode 28, I interviewed Aaron Ojard. He's with the VGA, the Veteran Golfing Association, and that's the one that I was talking about earlier, the golf organization. But I was at a golf tournament for Music for Vets, another nonprofit, and she introduced me to Aaron and said, "You guys need to talk. He's got a nonprofit. I think you're going to like it." And so I started talking to him, and as soon as he mentioned what they were doing with golf, I was just extremely excited that I can't wait to get this information out to veterans. Veterans need to hear about this organization. This organization is a year old, and they've got 1,000 people or something that were playing golf, and the top 80 and are going in November. They're going to be playing Pinehurst.
Oh, wow.
These people are playing tournaments all over the country at some of the world's best golf courses. They're paying $40 for an annual membership. $40 for an annual membership. And then they pay like $35 for a tournament. Some of these tournaments are in places that nobody else could get into. It's these closed clubs, and they're letting the veterans come in and play. Hearing the stories like that of different organizations and seeing how it can help veterans and what it means to veterans that are getting help from these organizations. John Jackson, I was interviewing in episode 25 with Stag Vets. That's one that you might want to talk to him about getting on your show. He does sustainable farming.
Oh, okay.
But he tells a story about how he was watching his last sunset. He had his pistol in his hand, and as soon as that sun went down, he was going to end it. And his son came in and said, "Hey, Dad, what's for dinner?" Totally shook him out of it and put down the gun. They got up and went for dinner. And he just started thinking, like, what am I doing? He ended up going and creating Stag Vets, which now in turn is helping hundreds or thousands of other veterans who are all going to be in a community working to create this sustainable farm that then the produce can go to Americans so that they don't need to go and get their produce from outside of the country.
Wow, I am in awe over that.
So it's hearing those stories that just keeps me motivated to keep this going.
I can definitely understand why now. So now I'm going to ask a question that may seem callous or perhaps even stupid, but I think it's one, and I guess I'll put it this way. The majority of the population has never served. So fully understanding the importance of veteran support organizations may escape them. outside blind support for the troops. But, and I think part of the story you just told illustrates that, but why are these systems of support so crucial and so important to veterans?
That's a great question. I think what people don't realize is that veterans are highly trained individuals. And I'm not talking about vehicle mechanic really knows how to work on a vehicle. I'm talking about veterans in general. They're taught things like following processes and leadership and empathy, how to train others, especially serving others, right?
Hmm.
So these are people that eventually become incredible community leaders, and they help the community as a whole. A lot of them, they're prevented from moving into that position to help the community because they've got something that's holding them back. They might have PTSD, they might have traumatic brain injury, or something like that, or they just, they're feeling a little off. But if they're able to get that support that they need and that camaraderie from being around other people on a regular basis, that, people that understand the things that they've been through and understand what it is they're feeling, then they're able to progress and they're able to grow. They're able to move into those positions in the community to help the community as a whole, not just helping other veterans, but helping everybody. I interviewed Aaron from The Mission Continues, and I think that was episode 8. But I worked with him in DC, and The Mission Continues. They brought a team of over 300 people who were mostly veterans into this school, elementary school that was in the poorest neighborhood in the country. And 100% of the students there are on welfare. It's
Oh, wow.
that poor. And this school was pretty run down. And in a single day, Aaron's team went through there and completely revitalized this school, painted everything. I brought a team of mural artists from the Veteran Artist Program and put some awesome murals on the outside. And you think about what those veterans have done for that community, right? Those children now have a place where, they feel good about going and learning. That could be the difference between them dropping out of school or staying in. What does that mean for that community when they then grow up and they see what people have done for them and they turn around and do that for other people?
Man, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. To circle back to something you mentioned earlier, that there are a lot of these veterans associations out there, and I'm sure there's always going to be challenges in anything you try to do. So what are some of the common challenges that these organizations tend to encounter?
Well, one is usually funding. I mean, part of the problem is that they don't have the initial budgets to get the word out about their organization. When you said that you knew of a few organizations out there, I'm going to bet that one of them was the Wounded Warrior Program.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You hear about them everywhere. They're all over the place. I'm not taking anything away from them. They're doing great things. But it's kind of like Kleenex or Band-Aid, the name brand.
Mm-hmm.
When any organization out there wants to donate money to help veterans, that's top 3 on their list. And so most of the money gets funneled into that one organization. And there's a lot of other organizations out there that are doing amazing things, helping veterans. I mean, literally saving lives. And they're trying to get the word out about their organization so that they could get more funding.
That makes perfect sense. And I guess that brings up another question of mine, which is if somebody wanted to help support vets and they wanted to do something beyond just Wounded Warrior, kind of, as you were saying, the brand name generic organization, what else can people do to help support these organizations in the best way possible? Is it just giving money? Is it giving time? What is it that these organizations really need?
Almost all of them will take in volunteers. That doesn't just help the organization, that helps the volunteers as well. I've volunteered with a lot of different organizations over the past 5 years. And I've gotten so much out of just being there and seeing the fruit of my labor, seeing the good that I'm doing through the organization. And so I think most organizations would be extremely open to having somebody come in and help them out. And it all depends on what skills you have too. I mean, if somebody is really good at, I don't know, painting, and they go to an organization, they probably have some kind of need for whatever it is, whatever it is, those skills that you have. And if they don't, then like I said, there's thousands of organizations out there. So try to find one that is around what you're really passionate about, and you can really do a lot of good helping that organization.
That kind of brings up another thing that I know in the last few years, there's been a lot of crap in the media or in the news about different organizations, not necessarily veterans organizations, but just in general, where the public later finds out like, oh, their funds were being misused or misappropriated, or, the CEOs of these organizations make all this crazy money and only 1% of what people donate actually ends up making it to the aid. How would you recommend people actually go about evaluating an organization to know if it's the right one for them and if it's, a legitimate one that they should really put their time, money, or energy into?
Well, I think you really need to do your homework and try to get as much information about that organization as you can. Go to my podcast, veteranpodcast.com. I mean, I've got almost 30 episodes up there now, or by the time this airs, I'll have more than that. Each one of them is a different organization, and I'm going through and I'm finding out what it is they're doing, what projects they have going, and what opportunities they have. But even with that, one of those organizations, or maybe a different organization that I haven't got to yet, you might say, this one sounds like it's the one that I want to go and help. It's the one that I want to donate money to, or donate my time to, or just get involved with. Go and talk to them. Find out. Ask them the questions. What percentage of the money goes to your programs? How do you normally, come up with what programs you're going to be running the next year? These people, they welcome people to come in and talk to them. And if they're going to be doing something shady, you're going to be able to tell by what they're saying and how they're saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the ones that I've been talking to and I've been dealing with, you could tell right away. They're in it because they've got a huge heart and they really want to help veterans.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Focusing a little more on you and your show, tell us a little bit more about it. How often are you putting out an episode?
So my show, I've got a new episode coming out every week on Wednesday, as a matter of fact. I'm also producing another podcast, the VAP podcast, for the Veteran Artist Program. I've been working with them for the past 5 years now. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because this announcement hasn't really been put out there yet. You're getting the exclusive here, Aaron.
Awesome. I love exclusives.
But we're bringing my podcast under the Veteran Artist Program umbrella. And the Veteran Artist Program podcast is being brought under the umbrella. And we're going to be getting more veteran-focused podcasts all under the Veteran Artist Program. And I'm going to be managing the podcasts. I'm going to be making sure that they're done correctly and that they're done on a regular basis and that they're the highest quality podcast that can be put out there. We really want to try to get as many people listening to the podcasts as possible, and we're putting them all in one place to make that nice and easy. So you'll be able to go right to the veteranartistprogram.org, and you'll be able to find all of the podcasts that are veteran-friendly, veteran-focused, all in one spot.
Well, that's neat. It's almost like a radio network.
Exactly.
Oh, very cool. Well, cool. And how can people connect with you and find out about the great stuff you're doing and find out more and listen to your podcast and all that fun stuff?
Well, you can go to veteranpodcast.com for the Veteran Resource Podcast. And I could be reached at jeremy@veteranpodcast.com. For the Veteran Artist Program, you can go to veteranartistprogram.org. You'll find links to everything from those locations: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I think we're working on an Instagram too.
Oh, fun.
And I'm also going to be having at veteranpodcast.com, I'm going to be creating this consolidated list of information on all of the organizations that were on the podcast. And I'm going to be giving that away for free just by going to the site. You'll see the button there. You click on the button and you'll receive a copy. That way you can get as much information about those organizations as possible.
Oh, that's neat. And that makes it a little bit easier than maybe sifting through everything else out there in the world as far as like being able to get a consolidated list of, hey, I want to go fishing with other veterans, or I want to go, I don't know, sheep herding with other veterans, or canoeing or whatever.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Jeremy, man, I respect the hell out of what you're doing. Please keep doing it. Thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Aaron. Really, really appreciate it.
Hey listeners, I'm sure you are running, driving, or otherwise distracted by a squirrel right now. So when you get back in front of a computer, be sure to hit www.intherabbithole.com/E149. You'll find the show notes and links to all the stuff mentioned on this episode, along with the ability to comment on this episode. And don't forget, if you are active or retired military or a first responder, shoot me an email at itrh@intherabbithole.com with your info and we'll get you hooked up. Everyone else, visit itrh.net today to find out about the member benefits of the ITRH Armada. Again, that's itrh.net. Visit it today. With that, we wrap up episode 149 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.